Good morning, everyone. Happy Thursday, March 31st. You are listening to the Daily Drop-In Morning Show, where the Teach Better team is live every single morning, Monday through Friday at 7 a.m. Eastern. We are so excited to be here, kicking off our Thursday, streaming on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, and LinkedIn. And a special shout out to those of you who are listening on Teach Better Talk podcast. Really appreciate you listening, even though it's after the fact. We have a lot in store for you today. We have a new guest. I'm sure many of you are familiar with her. And of course, we have our good news article, celebration, and diving into further our theme for this week. So please go fill up your coffee. Let's get started all together, and we'll be right back. Good morning, everyone. We are getting started with the Daily Drop-In Morning Show. We love that you are joining us and commenting and being an active participant this morning. We have Rachelle with us. How are you doing this morning?
Oh my gosh, I was like almost on mute. I'm very quiet this morning, apparently. No, I'm great, Ray. Thanks so much for having me. And it's early for me. It's early for a lot of people, for you especially, but enjoy being here and the opportunity and love checking out who you have and what you talk about each day on the Daily Drop-In. So thank you.
No, we really appreciate you being here as well. I know a lot of educators are connected with you, love learning from you. I cannot wait to introduce you to more of our Teach Better community, even though I know so many of them will be familiar with the work that you're doing. Will you start us off with like quick introduction if this is our first time connecting with you?
Yeah, so let's see, the quick introduction. So I'm Rachelle Dene Poth, and I do a lot of things in education because I love learning. So I'm a full-time teacher, full-time consultant, and author and attorney, and I teach pretty close to Pittsburgh, where I've been teaching for a really long time. Hey, good morning, Laura. And I currently teach Spanish and a course to 8th graders on STEAM emerging technology, but I've also taught French, which was my original major, and then it's kind of transitioned over the years. So that, I think, is it in a nutshell.
Wow. So in the classroom, doing a ton of work with students, but then also doing an enormous amount of work with teachers. Tell me a little about that.
Yeah. So, I've always, even as a kid, I would go to school and I'd come home and I play school. I don't know if anybody else did that or not, but I was the teacher and the student at home, or sometimes my grandma would be my student or would be the teacher telling me to do my own real homework, not just the made up stuff. But I don't know, I never saw myself going into education, but I just always liked whenever I would learn something to share that with others, or if I could learn something and explain it or make it easier for other people. So I think that's where like my drive comes from for what I do and why I've stayed in education longer than what I anticipated originally. But I just like working. I love working with students. And I'm often asked, what do you still do? Well, first people think like, you're still in the classroom. I didn't know you were still in the classroom, and I am. And I stay there because I love working with the students and just those interactions and what I learned from them. But I also love working with teachers because I've seen the impact in my class of changing things up and trying different methods and tools or whatever. And I want to kind of help other educators to do that, although it's going to look different in their classrooms as well. What works for me won't necessarily work for them, but just to make the connections. And so many of my first years of teaching, I spent I've written about it, I'm not going to go into it, but just, basically in isolation and not breaking out of like the way I had been taught. So I've been trying to really help others to take those different steps or to ease some of the I don't have enough time or it's too difficult. And I like making those connections, whether with teachers or students, just to try to make an impact.
You said you've written about it. I know books is one of the mediums that you continue to share with teachers. Can you speak a little bit to the books that you've been able to put out there into the world for educators to learn from?
Yeah, I mean, if you would have told me, I guess 3.5 or so, 4 years ago now, yeah, you're going to write these books, and I'd be like, no, definitely not going to happen. But, I've written a variety of books, and in a lot of them, I've shared stories of students. My first book, I had actually 2 students who at the time were juniors, both wrote and contributed a chapter into that one and then several other ones. But in some of the other, especially the most recent one, I've just been sharing some different stories from other educators. The most recent one has, I think, including myself, 50. And it's like things I wish ... knew. And it's just different perspectives. And, the funny thing about the books I've written, like, you don't have to read from cover to cover. Like, I'd like you to read the entire book. But if you're looking for something specific, it's just putting ideas out there and sharing not just my story, because I don't really think I'm that interesting, but if I can share stories, and I learned so much over these past couple of years from the stories that have been shared, and just, it helps me to think and reflect on my practice, and also to find, that courage to take some different risks, or, look at my own practice and think, yeah, I could be doing so much more, or I really struggled with that. And had I read this before, it would have helped me, and not just me, but also my students. So whatever I experience, I like to share. Like I said before, if I can make it easier for somebody, if somebody can read a story that's in the book that's been shared by somebody else and connect with them, like that's what I really love doing.
So powerful. I think so many educators are always seeking the connection, and not only a collaborative educator they can talk shop with, but also resources. And I love that you've been able to blend the two into your life intentionally, to say, yeah, I'm always accessible, but here's kind of a curation of work I've done. You also do other things outside of books to share your story. Tell us a little bit about that. I know that you're very familiar with live streaming.
Yeah. Who would have thought that one? I started a podcast September of 2019, and the joke has been, it's like me talking to myself, like my own conversations, but I was going to do it with students. And when I started doing the podcast, I actually was at conferences, and I was using Synth, which used to be Recap. And I was doing little like recordings like, hey, if you want to learn about augmented reality, Jamie Donnelly is doing a session here. And I would tweet those out to people instead of going through the program. And then I just decided to start doing the podcast, and there are no edits. Like, it's nothing great. I use Anchor. I sit down, I think about a topic, and I just talk, hope that it's like a 10 to 12 minute. But then Melody and I had been talking, and she was doing the coffee with Mandy Freilich. And she's like, oh, we should do a show. And I don't know how I feel about that. But we've been since, I think we started July of 2020. Mondays and Fridays, and you've been on our show, and it's just meant to be, like this, like conversation. People can join in, have a chat, have some fun. And I've really enjoyed it. I wish I would have started when she originally said that, but I've gotten to connect with people. More importantly, other people have gotten to connect with each other in those spaces. And it's just another way to build your network and to have that community. So I don't know, all the things, right?
All the things. No, that's something I really do value about being connected to you, is I have met so many people, and I really do appreciate that you are so committed to not only helping educators with, instructional practices, their interest in technology, how to support students with language, but also your commitment to bring educators together in collaboration to join each other's networks. Because, obviously Lainey was on yesterday. I met her through you. And then there's been so many other connections that I've been able to form. I do want to give you a very special shout out. I don't know if we've ever talked about this, but I sat in your session at a conference when we were in Wisconsin together. And I will tell you, you literally spent 45 minutes giving as many tech resources related to augmented reality and virtual reality that I have ever seen. I think it was a record of how many resources you provided. And throughout my entire time in the classroom, I was incorporating those resources. And everyone I spoke to was always so flabbergasted about how many different augmented reality or virtual reality tools I had in my toolbox. And it was often one 45-minute session with you. I had like in abundance, and used them so frequently in my middle school math classroom, which I think many are like, augmented reality in a math classroom, so it was just so funny. I constantly singing your praises.
Well, thank you. It's kind of scary though, because I think like all of the tools out there, probably people were like, oh, I'm so overwhelmed. There's so many things. But I always say, like, I would rather give you a bunch of ideas so you walk away and you can kind of sort through them, or if I can demo them. And I remember doing that session. That's such a great conference. I've missed, I think I went twice, but it was just such a nice experience in the sessions. But I think, I had like goggles, night vision goggles on, and was kind of putting things in the background and so forth. And yeah, and augmented reality, I love talk. It's one of my favorite topics to talk about. So thank you for that.
No,
Shout
it's so
out.
fun. And it looks like Bree's in the comments
Hey,
saying
Bree.
that, your session was one of her favorites at Teach Better 19 conference. Again, just an abundance of resources and encouragement. I just think your style is to try and give as much as possible to your audience as quickly as possible with the time that you have. And it is it's so something that I connected to. So I really appreciate that approach.
Well, thank you.
As we get started here, we're going to transition here in a minute to Brainstorm Bank. It's Thursday morning, friends. So we are going to start with that conversation with all of us this morning before we head into our good news article and holidays. But Rachelle, we do like to document a moment of gratitude using an app called Happy Feed, which is a free app that we love to document a moment of gratitude every morning in Daily Drop-In and then be able to revisit these experiences. So Rachelle, if I was to ask you something that you are grateful for this morning, what would be your answer?
Oh my gosh, I have to just give you one. I'm terrible.
You can give as many as you want. As many as you
want. I'm just grateful to be surrounded by so many people that I get to learn from and have fun with and to support. And when I say that, I just mean, family, friends, the students, like every day. It's just, I don't know. I mean, even when you're feeling like down or you're stressed or whatever, it's just knowing that you have this circle of people around you. And, in years past, we didn't have all the technology. You might have just been at home with like rotary phones and you call your friend and like it's busy. There's no call waiting or anything like that. Or they don't answer because they don't know it's you and don't have caller ID. But it's nice to know, even some of us, we get up in the morning, you're like, oh, I'm tired, or you got this going on. You get into your classroom and you have that chance to work with the students, or if you're an administrator or tech coach, and you have the colleagues and your peers, or your friends, even if you don't get to see them as we've experienced in the last 2 years. I mean, that's been really tough, but being able to connect in these different spaces. So I'm just thankful to have so many different people that I get to interact with every single day that impact my life and lift me up. And hopefully I lift them up too when they need it. And, I don't know if that's a nutshell, but that's what I'm thankful for. I was actually thinking last night, I was working on something and I don't even know what popped in my head, but you get a thought and then it's like, you totally forget what you were doing and you just go down this trail. And I started to go back and think about students and different experiences and conferences and all these things. And I'm like, wow, there are so many people out there that I get to interact with and I can reach out to whenever I need to. And I try to be really intentional about doing the same thing and reaching out to them. So I'm just thankful for the people that I'm surrounded by. Near or far, I should say. Near or far.
Near and far. I love that. No, such a great topic. Friends, we'll be right back as we get into Brainstorm Bank, which is going to be a discussion around our theme this week, but also all the things that Rachelle is passionate about. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for Daily Drop-In this morning. We are live every single morning here on the Daily Drop-In, Monday through Friday at 7 a.m. Eastern. And we are so excited to continue our conversation. Rachelle, we've had a theme this week. We have a theme every single week. But the theme this week is all about how our language can lead to specific outcomes and our impact on the world. What are your thoughts on that initial idea? I know language is something that you are passionate about. It's something that you've taught. It's something that you use as a communications tool to support educators. I mean, language seems to be very relevant to you.
Yeah, it's the first thing that comes to mind is honestly like just the intentionality of what you're saying and the thinking that goes into it. Like just as an example in the classroom, I go in every day and I might have like this mindset that I'm going to do these activities. And how I explain things, or if let's say that, a student does something, we've all had challenging experiences, and it's like the language that we use is so important. And so the words that we choose, and I've written about this too, it's like, over the years, some of my students will say, well, how many times have you sent somebody to the office, or how many times do you ever yell or things like that? And I say, yeah, but in the X amount of years that I've been here, I mean, maybe on two hands, I can count the number of times that I actually kind of like, I'd say lost it, but I didn't really lose it. but the conversations and the language that I chose in those experiences left me feeling a certain way. And then the impact of those didn't necessarily like resolve a situation or help to, improve a relationship or whatever was going on. And so I've tried to be really intentional in my classroom, with my friends, with whoever, with what I'm doing as a teacher, with what I'm writing, with interactions with friends, about like conveying my thoughts or whatever it is I'm writing about or talking about. Or if there is something happening in my classroom, thinking about how am I going to convey this message to somebody? And it might not even be necessarily like words. Like words, of course, are clear, but sometimes it's just, the mannerisms or the body language that conveys it, that will leave somebody feeling either like they need to be lifted up, or it's something that you need to address and kind of refocus attention or work through a challenging behavior or something like that. And years ago, I had a couple of years ago, I had an experience with a student that the behavior was kind of like up and down. We all have those where you're just like, you don't know what to expect on any given day. And I really just wasn't kind of working at it the way that I should have, because I didn't really know. I didn't have that experience before. A teacher prep for me, like long ago, was not the same as what it is today. So we didn't have these connections where you could reach out to your network. And when I thought back on that, I thought, gosh, I could have said like, let's talk about this, or, is there something going on, and had more of a conversation and chose different words to convey to this student that what they were doing was not necessarily like the best choice, or was not a welcome behavior, or whatever it is. And that's kind of a really long answer, but I just really think first before I speak or act, because I want to make sure that whatever, the words stick with you. I can think back to my own experience in school, where a teacher said something and like the words stung, and like they wanted me to do one thing, but then it had like this total opposite effect. And so thinking about, what are you hoping from somebody in your classroom, from a student in your classroom, or what do you hope a family member or a friend, like, what do you want them to do if you need some help? Like, how do you ask for that? So that you're clear and specific. And so words matter. And even in my classroom, students sometimes will say things and I'll say, I'll act like I'm a thesaurus, and I'll give them like substitute words and say, let's expand this a little bit. Or a different way to say this is, and I give an example, like modeling it a little bit. So I don't know, those are my initial kind of 59 cents worth of thoughts.
Any strategies or like tactical action steps or suggestions that you might have, and how we, kind of can control our language a little bit?
I don't know, but I'm open to something. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah. I don't know, but I'm open to suggestions if anybody has any.
Yeah, that reminds me, somebody had asked me a question one time about SEL, like years ago, and like, what are you doing in your classroom? And I went, oh, well, what are you doing in your classroom? Because I wasn't as familiar with it then. And then it gave me that kind of comfort level. No, I think, sometimes like another example is there was a student that we were using Nearpod in my classroom, and for the first time, and I didn't, just because the students have the devices in their hands, like make the assumption that they know all the things. And so I started the lesson, and back, if anybody knows those sketch pads, I think sketch pads, right? You draw, you shake, erases it. Well, the kids were thinking same thing. Like, I got my phone, I'm going to write on it. Well, they wrote something, and it wasn't really that bad, but I had the board on because I was showing them the teacher side. And I hurried up and I shut it down. At the end of class, they came up and they said, okay, so when's my detention? And I said, well, why do you think you have detention? Well, because I always get detention. I said, well, okay. And I was just kind of like, not really sure. I was like, just like I am now, I'm like, all right. And I said, well, I'd kind of rather just talk to you about it. And I, like, when the words came out of my mouth, I thought, what did I just say? And they looked at me confused, like, what do you mean talk? And I said, well, let's talk about what happened and why, and I explained, like, when you write this on here, it's on here. But I think that whenever you just like take time to think through, or, minimize it, or not initially react to something, because that's what I would do sometimes. I would see the behavior, like in that case, and not the student. And that's just a minor little thing, which was a great lesson for me. Like, don't have the smartboard on if the kids don't know how to use or whatever. So ever since then, I've been very good and very clear about, let me tell you that when you're using this, like front loading it a little bit, I guess, or anticipating sometimes, where you might, because you've been in education for a while, you might anticipate there might be an issue, or a problem that arises. And so you get your mindset wrapped around like, okay, these might be some questions. And it could be not even in a classroom teacher role, but an administrator, a tech coach, anybody, whatever your role is, or not even in your education experience, your line of work that you're doing. If you have to have a conversation, have in your mind like talking points or just things that you want to focus on so that you stay clear on that and you don't just kind of go down this other path or direction and end up not even actually having the point conveyed that you wanted to have conveyed.
No, I always hear that phrase like clear is kind, right? So that goal of knowing what you're striving to get towards, then trying to provide as much leeway as possible to get there successfully with the group that you're leading. I think that's so intuitive with the work that you're discussing is how can I communicate as effectively as possible so that, in the future I don't run into hurdles.
Yeah. There will be hurdles, but I always say learning as I go, works in progress. And sometimes when you if it's a behavior, for example, when you just breathe, Laura Steinberg always says, just breathe for a moment and just think, just like sending an email, like something, you're angry, you're fired up about something, you might type it out, or like in my case, you voice the text, and then just take a minute to pause and think through it or read over it or process the thoughts before like they actually, and I say that to students too. I'm like, words matter. And you got to think first, like just breathe and then respond or then take action.
I actually just like that. Breathe and then whatever comes next is fine, but breathe first.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah, definitely.
Rachelle, you have so many different pieces of insight that you've been able to share with educators, whether it be related to tech or SEL or language or storytelling or making connections for educators. There's so many different passion spaces you have. If you had like a soapbox moment, like if you wanted, if people were tuning in right now and they were like, all right, this is the major takeaway of this morning's conversation. If I take away nothing else, what's your message that you are striving to share with educators these days that you want to make sure every educator considers?
I might be able to answer this one with one word. I know it's a shocker. It's like a world record. Write that down. Rachelle answered something in one word, even though I'm leading up to it.
I was going to say that's good, but also like I'm going to have you elaborate on it. So
I know. No, I think the biggest thing, honestly, connect. And I say that because that one word can lead to so many other things. And it's something that I wish I knew a long time ago. And I was connecting, going through school, we have our connections. But when I got into my classroom, at first, I thought everything was going great, but we didn't have, again, back then, long ago, we didn't have these different spaces like this to go live and Twitter and all the social media. And we didn't have all the conferences and the webinars and all of that. So it was hard to do because you were in your classroom and you were with the students. And then any time in between, it was like running to the restroom, having your lunch, and that was it. But all of these years leading up to, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago when I first officially started to become more connected, I kept things that I was struggling with to myself, or I used the ideas only that I'd experienced as a student, and I wasn't kind of extending my learning. But when I started Connect through Twitter, which I was like, I'm never getting Twitter and Facebook and all of these different networks that we have now, and also just in conferences and getting out there and speaking, even though I always say like, I hate to speak in public and I'm not a fan, but I go and I do it. But it's because I'm talking about things I'm passionate about and, what the students are doing or things I've learned and to share. So it all comes down to the connections that you make with students, with colleagues, with family, friends, of course, and how you can support one another. And then when it comes to being in education, what can you share with others and what can you learn from others? And if you don't connect with anybody, then it's just you and you're stagnating your own growth. And then that's impacting your students and everybody else that you're learning and leading with, which is what I like to say. So one word is connect, and people here, having the drop it into, and it's hard to do all the things. So it can be overwhelming to think, well, I can't do the Twitter, Facebook, and all of that. But just start with one community, one chat, one conference, one whatever it is, a book study even, and just build from there and build your network. Because even though you may be in your classroom or if you're an administrator and you're like, I'm just stuck in my office, knowing that you can reach out to anybody from around the world at any point in time with a question that you're going to get an answer to it, or you're going to get some pushback that's like, you know what, that's the worst idea I've ever heard, like whatever it is, that is essential. And so, yeah, that's my reasoning behind the word connect, because it leads to so many other things.
There's plenty of educators that are going to hear you and say, okay, fine, I'm going to go connect. And they're going to log into all their different social medias, connect with you, and see that you are a very connected educator. I know Twitter is a huge platform you use. You love to connect with others. If somebody is seeing that and saying, oh gosh, how do I get started? What would be your suggestion with getting started, connecting? We'll use Twitter for an example.
Yeah, if you pick one, because like there are so many, but pick one and, set aside, find a chat. There's lots of chats happening, or follow a hashtag and then just dive in, because the best thing about it is that you could do that at any time. I mean, there's stuff going on Twitter all the time. Pop into a spaces conversation. Those are happening. There are so many going on every single day, and just listen and get a feel for it. That is actually how I kind of really got started with Twitter. I mean, I created an account, and the first chat that I got into was the Wiley Ed chat. And I remember them saying, it was educators in Tennessee. And I remember them saying, ironically, Tennessee, them saying, hey, what part of Tennessee are you from? I was like, I'm from Pittsburgh. And I had no idea, because I didn't know. And I met them, and that goes back to, like, I kid you not, probably late 2014. And then the following year I went to ISTE in Philly. And at that point I found the chats, like it was, what was it? Sat Chat West Coast, I think, Sat Chat WC at the time. And I was on the train riding Amtrak across the state to Philadelphia for my first ISTE conference. I was reading Teach Like a Pirate. I had TweetDeck open, which I had no clue what I was doing, but I was in this chat. And then I got to that conference and I got to meet some of those people in person. I was like, you're real people, from that first chat. And it was just, I think it was a Wednesday night, 30 minutes, very quick. So find one space, send me a message like, hey, I'm new to Twitter. What do you recommend? What's your role in education? What level do you teach? What are your interests? Check out a hashtag and just, hang out for a little bit, and then see what people are saying, add to the conversation at your convenience or where you feel most comfortable, and try it out. And you may decide like, I don't really know about this Twitter thing. That's okay, because you can go to Facebook or LinkedIn and you can find different communities and engage there as well.
Such good advice. Just go connect. Such an important reminder on this early Thursday morning as you're getting ready, closing out May, heading into April. Just focus on how we can be better at connecting and take a little bit of risk to put ourselves out there and make these new connections. I love it. Perfect message for this morning. Rachelle, we're going to transition here into our conversation around good news and a good news article. So are you ready to celebrate with us this morning?
Absolutely.
All right, we'll be right back. Good morning, everyone. It is Thursday, March 31st, and we have had a lot of conversation around connections. We had a lot of conversation around how important and influential other people can be in our careers, in our space, in our network. So really good reminders so far this morning. It is, of course, a day full of holidays. And Rachelle, we were talking before we came live that these holidays are kind of really fun opportunities to foster conversation. Can you share a little bit about how you've used holidays in your private Facebook group or anything else, kind of like to get people like thinking and talking?
Yeah. So I don't know if this is a good or bad thing, but there's tons of subscription boxes, which I did not really know about. I knew about like the clothing ones, but Nicole Taylor had one that she did. So Melody and I had gotten a subscription box. So then that led me to Crate Joy, where I found all of these other ones. And I get this paper box, which you can get personalized stationery with a different theme every month. So it's really hard to find my name on anything anymore. I used to have to get like a Sharpie and add an extra LE at the end of Rachel when I could find it. But anyway, in that paper box, it sends a calendar, and I thought I had one near me, but anyway, it's like the month, and each day it had some kind of a celebration. It might've been a holiday. It might've been something kind of really funny. So I started to post that in the Thrive and EDU community on Facebook, like, hey, can you guess what today is? And I might put a picture or just say what it is, and, how are you celebrating? But then I went to every other month with the box. So then I just started to look on the internet to find, and like some days there are like 4 things that are being recognized, if not more. And some of them are tied into like professions or to, their actual holidays, or they're just some really funny things. So I just think it like lightens the mood a little bit just to laugh about it. Or, like Pie Day. I mean, like in my school years ago, I didn't know that was a thing. And there were all these pies, and the kids were coming to my classroom saying like, oh my gosh, I just ate so much pie. And I said, where were you eating pie? And they told me what class. I went, why were you eating pie? They're like, because it's Pie Day. Like, what do you mean? They're like, it's March 14th. I went, okay, I get the 314. Okay, you actually ate pie. So yeah, but it was kind of funny. And in my classroom too, the kids will come in beginning of the year in Spanish. Are we going to celebrate Cinco de Mayo? I'm like, it's September and that's in May. They want to kind of, do something special and also learn about it as well. So that's what makes it fun.
No, it's always fun to celebrate these days. And for those of you who tune in frequently, some days there's only 1 or 2 holidays, and other days there's so many holidays. I think, like, we joke, there was a few days in January where there was like 27 holidays. I'm like, guys, don't pick today to make another holiday. Let's wait until there's only like 4, and then we can add to that one. But today is there's a bunch of different holidays today, all different types of celebrations depending on what you're looking for. One of which is World Backup Day. So make sure that you don't lose anything on your computer. Make sure you back up everything. It's also Eiffel Tower Day. Have you been to Paris before?
Yeah, wait.
There you go. See?
I have. As a senior in high school, it's one of my favorite places to go. So I have that. I didn't just put that there just for props. Like that's been there forever. But I even in my classroom, I have, because like I said, I used to teach French, but I have little Eiffel Towers, and I went as a senior and I could not wait. I've only been there one time and I've always wanted to go back, but one of these days, maybe today, I should just get a ticket and go to Paris to celebrate.
Today's the day to either get a ticket or even just reminisce about the vacation. That's what you need to do. It's also Manatee Appreciation Day, which I love that. Hey, manatees are beautiful animals. I think an appreciation day dedicated to them is kind of fun.
Oh my.
Last but not least, it is National Clams Day, National Crayon Day, which may be good to celebrate over in our schools. National Prom Day, National Tater Day. Are you a fan of taters, like potatoes?
Oh yeah. I like French fry, you name it, any kind of potatoes. Sweet potatoes.
Yeah, anything like potato I think is good. French fries, tater tots, I'm good with all that. And then last but not least, it's Transgender Day of Visibility. So lots of different avenues here to find things to celebrate, to find an excuse to eat something special, to find an excuse to bring up something with students and have conversation. I mean, I think there's going to be so many different options to continue to foster a relationship.
Yeah, Ray, National Prom Day. Like, how funny would it be to just wear one of your prom dresses?
Right?
There's one at my parents. Actually, people could wear it today because the style. It's not from when it was, but could you imagine if like teachers, maybe some do somewhere, just dress up like wearing, even the kids too, like what would you dress up like for the prom, or how did you dress when you went to the prom? That would be really interesting.
Oh, yeah, bring in old prom photos and evaluate the hair and the makeup and all the outfits. It'd be so fun.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Oh, prom. Yeah, so we also have a good news article for all of you this morning. This one is specifically on tennis. Are you familiar at all with tennis?
Yeah. And I say, so I'll tell you this really quickly because it's kind of funny. My parents always played tennis. There was a racket club. My mom's an excellent tennis player. My dad was as well. They would always go like Saturday afternoons. They'd be there all day because of tournaments. And I would spend the whole day at the racket club. I would swim, I would color, I would play Pac-Man, whatever it was back in the day. And my mom got me tennis lessons. And I just, I enjoyed it, but there was a lot of running and I'm not a runner. And the time of my tennis lessons directly conflicted with Saturday morning cartoons. And so let's just say that my lessons of tennis did not last very long because I really liked the cartoons better than I liked the early morning, like literally 7:30 a.m. running around the court. But I do like tennis. I do like watching tennis. And so.
Well, tennis is always fun. I too am not a tennis player, but I found this to be interesting. Maybe something we can bring to our students. This is just a good news article related to the history of March 31st, because 20 years ago today, there was a tennis player named Andre who actually claimed his 700th career match victory in the Miami Open. And so with this, if you go back 20 years ago, he played over 700 matches and won, which was a huge accomplishment. So this was just something interesting. I thought would be an opportunity to bring this to students, talk about athleticism, talk about career success, be able to talk about some sports and talk shop. But there's so much history on what type of matches he's played and how he was able to work towards this big career milestone. But definitely a lot to celebrate there. And tennis is a fun sport to be able to bring into the classroom.
Yeah, and Andre Agassi, right?
Yes.
Great, phenomenal player. So I remember my mom would be watching. My mom, she loves to watch tennis too. So
yeah, see, and this would be a great conversation. Good stories of your background to be able to talk with students about and hear about other sports that have these, big milestones that you're able to dive into.
Yeah, definitely agree. I love talking sports with the students, just especially because it's another way to connect with what they're doing and what their interests are. And in Spanish, we're learning about that right now too. So it's all good. It's a great day for this.
It's so good. Yeah, I love bringing sports into the classroom and continue to make those connections. Rachelle, do you want to make sure our community gets to stay connected to you? So would you mind giving us some information on how we can not only connect with you on social media, but continue to consume all the incredible content that you put out there for educators to learn from?
Well, I have to say that unlike Lainey, Lainey's is easy to remember. Mine is a little bit different, but it's my Twitter handle is RDENE915, which is actually my first initial, my middle name, Dene, and my birth date, because when I created my original email account back with AOL, I followed the suit of what my parents did. So I've kept that. So Twitter, Instagram, my Gmail, if you want to send me an email, just add the Gmail. And my blog site is just put the www, I can't even say it, W3, W to the third power.com around it. And I'm on LinkedIn too. But, I would love to connect with anybody. Send me a message, ask a question, share some resources. I just love to learn.
Love it. No, it's so important. Please go add Rachelle to your professional learning network. She's been a part of the Teach Better community for a long time. I'm going to keep my fingers crossed that we hopefully get to see you at the Teach Better 2022 conference, because I know so many educators value learning from you, and you would just be such a wonderful addition to all the networking and fun that we're going to have at that event. So I really do appreciate you waking up bright and early on a busy school morning to spend time with us, but thrilled that our community gets to connect with all your stories and all the insight that you're able to share. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, well, thank you. And the Teach Better conference, I'm definitely hoping to get there, because there are some friends that I have not yet met in person that live in Ohio. So I'm hoping to get there, because it was such a great experience the last time that I was there, getting to see everybody, meet face to face first time. And I met Bree there and many others, Josh Stamper and some other members of your Teach Better team. So it was great. So I recommend, if you can get there, that you should go, because it's an awesome experience.
So fun. For those of you who are interested in submitting a proposal, don't forget those are open all this month as we conclude March and also next month. So you can share your story and present alongside all these other incredible educators that will be sharing their story that incredible October weekend that we'll be working up to. Rachelle, thank you again for all that you were able to share with us. And I really appreciate you. I hope that you'll come back on the show and continue to share insight with our network.
Yeah, well, thank you for this. And I'm going to say right back to you, because you need to come back on our show and have a chat too. So we'll have to set that up and then invite other people. And thanks to everybody who's been joining in. Look at the comments. It's great to see everybody joining in this morning. And Holly said that she got a Crate Joy subscription. Yes, can be dangerous. But thank you, Ray, for this and for everybody who's joined in. And I look forward to connecting.
As we conclude March, please enjoy your last few sips of coffee, getting into a fabulous day ahead. And of course, reach out in case you need anything. We're always here to support you, or at least connect you with somebody who can. So thank you for tuning in, and we really appreciate you. Have a wonderful rest of your Thursday, friends.